Hi everyone, this is John from neweveningisle.com, and I am here to talk about my newest work in cello composition titled The Hero's Journey of the Psalms Chord. So, I have been interested in the cello, especially how it sounds, since I've been taking music seriously, so about 11 years now. Although I've been predominantly playing guitar and the harp throughout most of this time, I'm still endlessly fascinated by the sound of a cello. I still think it's probably the most beautiful sounding instrument in the world. But yet, cello is not really the most accessible nor the most affordable instrument for many people to master. To me, the solution, the alternative was quite obvious. If I can't play and master the cello so easily, why can't I just arrange for it? You know, we live in the age of computers. I can easily just go on MuseScore or Sibelius and write scores for the cello and become a sort of 21st century Klaus Ogerman. So yeah, I've been interested in the cello since I was about 13 or 14. There are two songs on the cello that particularly stick out throughout all these years. One is called Green Pastures by Phuong Medley. I recommend you look that one up. It's sort of become an internet meme, like used for sad videos and stuff. So it's one of those things that you probably already know about. You just don't know what it's called. And there's another one called The Wet Teapot by Emily Shepard, which I was so mesmerized by when I first listened to it. It has this repeated major third arpeggio from E to C to E to C to E to C. And it's one of those things that I wish I could listen to for the first time again. I still remember it clear as day, what video I watched it from. It was from a whale shark documentary, 2015, 2016. I remember everything. So this composition, I've been doing cello compositions for about 5 months now, taking it seriously, putting out stuff. And I absolutely love doing it. It's probably my favorite, most fun things that gives me the most joy right now in music. So this particular composition is inspired by another composition that already exists by the legendary composer Igor Stravinsky, titled Symphony of Psalms. And in this composition, there is a chord that appears throughout it that lasts only maybe 1 second at most. And yet, it is such a striking, such an astonishing chord that 2 professional music critics have written detailed essays about it. And how that affects me is there's this sort of equation I have in my head where the smaller the subject is, the wider the audience it has, the more worth it's looking into. An example being like the catchphrase, "I'm feeling mighty low." I mean, there's a Wikipedia all about the person that just made that one catchphrase. So, you know, if there's something that small but yet people admire so much, it's got to be worth looking into. And in this case, it's something as small as one musical chord that it lasts a fraction of a second. So what is and they call it the Psalms Chord. There's a whole Wikipedia page about it. But there's probably a lot of people that are new to this chord, never heard of it until now. So I will briefly explain what the Psalms Chord is. So the Psalms Chord, when it was originally done by Stravinsky, is a very, very, very intense E minor chord, E minor voicing. So the chord is 4 octaves high, so it's a very, very wide chord, but the full E minor triad only appears at the 2 extreme ends of the chord. In other words, you will only find the full E minor chord on the very lowest of the notes and the very highest, but not in between. In between are only the third. So the voicing goes E, E, G, B, G, G, E, B, G. E, G, G, E, G, B. E, G, B, G, G, E, G, B. So that's the Psalms chord. If you want to play it on your piano or put it into Muse score, that's what it is. So, and there's much more emphasis on the third rather than the root, which gives it a bit of a more barking kind of sound, as is widely described as when people write about it. So I took this one chord, took the elements of that voicing, 4 octaves apart, with maximum emphasis on the third of the chord, of the triad, and make entire chord progressions out of it. And most predominantly used would be from I do 4-5-1. That's the chord progression that's used in this piece. It's 4-5-1, which I felt inspired to do when Ted Green was talking about it, when he was talking about Bach. And why is it called the hero's journey of the Psalms chord? Well, I take something that's very simple, which are just a series of 3 chords at a time, with no other melody, no other instruments, nothing. But I use effects. I use digital audio effects with specifically delay and reverb, and give it such heavy modulation that the chord plays itself rather than the instrument playing the chord, and just takes on so many different shapes, so many different textures, so many short periods of sounding extremely dry, and then other short periods of sounding extremely wet. So in the weird way, the chords tell the story without even having me to write a melody on top of it, or to accompany it with a singer or with a percussion instrument. So with only using modulation delay, I can use just one note to tell a story. And that's why modulation delay is my favorite audio effect of all time. So there's it's separated into 3 sections. I guess with a little bit of exponential stuff going on. So the first section is only the 4-5-1 with louder, more intense delay as it goes on, and that repeats 8 times until the intensity of the delay climaxes. And then the second section is 2 sets of chord progressions that are in different keys apart from each other, using the same voicings as the Psalms chord, and that is repeated 16 times. And in those 16 times, there's an underlying ping pong reverb effect that gets more intense, which maximizes the yield of the chord, makes the chord more and more self-sufficient. The chord can play more notes. The chord can play and stop more times as often as it wants to. And then the third is those same 2 chord progressions with a very simple melody I put on top of it. And that goes on 24 times. And the reverb on that becomes more spacious and wet as it goes on, which gives it an extremely cosmic and introspective sound. So that's really the gist of what the composition is about. So did I miss anything else? So I highly encourage more artists, more musicians, more composers to really share the stories behind their work. I do believe that that is the best way artists can combat AI right now. As the great Renaissance art theorist Leon Battista Alberti said, the greatest accomplishment of an artist is the history behind the painting. So if artists share in maximum detail the context and the story behind their artworks, as well as sharing their artworks, that is going to give them much more credibility than somebody who just uses AI to do everything for them. Even though theoretically, I don't believe the human brain is that different from an AI chatbot. because I don't think we're as creative as the mystics or the clerics say we are. As the brilliant philosopher Daniel Dennett said, what you can imagine depends on what you already know. So I do believe it's sort of like a abstract modulation of our ideas. Um, it's what I refer to as extraneous logic, which is sort of the normal computerized logic mixed with emotion and education. Those are the two main factors I've discovered. And that's what gives us uniquely and innately human characteristics in our art. And that's something that artists should try to push AI to not be able to accomplish. So I will make that very clear, because I think that's very important, and that's why I'm sharing with you the story behind my composition, because I believe to combat AI from taking over artists and their careers, we should all share the stories behind our work, what inspired us to make it, what the process was making it, because that's a big difference too, is process of making art versus programming the art. So so I will hopefully, I would love to be able to do more of this in the future, to share what it took to create some of my art and what inspired me to do it, because inspiration is still a little divine regardless of how far logical science has come. So anyways, I'm done rambling about that. So yeah, I really hope you check it out, my new cello composition, The Hero's Journey of the Psalms Chord. All right, thank you very much. Bye-bye.